Hello, my name is Kylie Smith, and I'm an auditor with MGO here in Sacramento, California. And today I'm discussing the whistleblower case, He Fought Halliburton and Won. And I'm going to be using my mic on my headphones today because my computer mic is not working. So first I'm going to do a bit of an overview. I'm going to begin by reviewing the case, He Fought Halliburton and Won. And I will analyze the case by considering the steps recommended by the Institute of Management Accountants and their guidelines for the resolution of ethical conflict. And then I will analyze the case in terms of Barraco's advice in We Don't Need Another Hero. So first of all, I selected the case He Fought Halliburton and Won. Dick Carosa, CFE, was interviewed Tony Menendez for Fraud Magazine, and the article was published in 2016. So to just give you a bit of a case summary, Halliburton was one of the world's largest oil field service companies. Part of the revenues were earned from building oil field service equipment and leasing the equipment to the customers, providing service on the equipment. Tony Menendez discovered improper revenue recognition in 2005. The bill and hold sales involved collecting payment in advance of providing oil field equipment and services to customers, and then they recorded that revenue in the period that the funds were received rather than the period in which the revenue was actually earned. So Menendez determined that the improper revenue recognition techniques had been taking place over a period of at least 6 years, and that they would be required to restate the financial statements to correct the error. So Menendez brought the issue to the attention of management, in particular his boss, who was the CFO, and they agreed with his assessment of the situation, but they refused to make the proper restatements. So Menendez realized that management was willfully violating SEC regulations. He filed a complaint with the SEC, and he learned that the SEC would not investigate the issue. Menendez informed the audit committee of the issue, who informed the CEO and other executives that Menendez was a whistleblower, and Menendez became the victim of retaliation by management, and he raised a whistleblower claim against Halliburton in 2006. So after 9 losses in various stages of appeals court, Menendez was vindicated with a win in the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals in 2015, and he received 2 awards, the Accountant in the Public Interest Award from Loyola Marymount University, tongue twister, and the Sentinel Award from the ACCT. Okay, so again, part 1 of the analysis is going to be looking at this case through the lens of the IMA's Resolution of Ethical Conflict Guidelines from page 38-39 in the textbook, and the other part is going to be considering Barraco's advice in We Don't Need Another Hero. So the first part of the IMA Resolution of Ethical Conflict basically is to discuss the issue with your immediate supervisor unless the immediate supervisor is involved in the issue, and then you would raise the issue to that next level of management as needed if you cannot find a satisfactory resolution. So if your immediate supervisor is a CEO or the equivalent, then you would have to go to an oversight body such as the audit committee, executive committee, board of directors, board of trustees, or even the owners. So pretty straightforward. It does note that communication to authorities outside of the individuals or to outside individuals is not appropriate, except in cases where there's a clear violation of law. So according to the Institute of Management Accountants, you should not be reaching out to law enforcement, whatever, at this time if you are not 100% sure that it's a violation of the law. Maybe not contacting CBS or local broadcasting or any of that either. Okay, so how did Menendez follow this step? Basically, according to the article, he initially shared his findings with his boss, Halliburton CEO Mark McCollum. And then him, like I said before, and all the other executives agreed with Menendez's treatment of the situation, but they sort of like dragged their feet and they refused to restate the financial statements. They had another strategy where they were peeling off inventory and doing other things to kind of partially correct the revenue recognition or the effects of the improper revenue recognition, but they refused to restate the financial statements. So Menendez found a clear violation of the law in this case, and he filed a confidential complaint with the SEC. So he was following that first step. He also informed the audit committee of the issue, but unfortunately the audit committee ignored Halliburton's own whistleblower policy, and they forwarded Menendez's complaint to the CFO, CAO, and the KPMG audit partner. So the executives ultimately retaliated against Menendez by revealing his name and his connection with the SEC inquiry. Okay, so the second and third steps for the IMA resolution of ethical conflicts are to clarify ethical issues by initiating a confidential discussion with an IMA ethics counselor or other impartial advisor. So basically getting a third party involved that'll help you be able to see the situation impartially. And then also consulting an attorney to just be able to clarify everything from a legal standpoint, if you basically be on the hook for anything or what your rights are in terms of maybe being a whistleblower. So Menendez did not seek out a counselor or other impartial advisor to clarify the issue, but the article and the interview do mention that he did discuss possible courses of action with his wife, and he did bring the issue to his boss, who he trusted. Menendez's wife was extremely supportive of Menendez taking the ethical course of action in this case, although his boss encouraged him to embrace the political realities of the organization, which was basically to brush the issue aside. Menendez didn't seek an attorney in response to the original ethical dilemma, but he did work with an attorney to file his whistleblower claim in 2008. In 2006. Through the SOX administrative process, he lost his attorney after a bunch of legal battles in 2008, and he represented himself until 2015 when he ultimately prevailed in his whistleblower claim. Okay, so switching over to part 2, looking at Badaracco's We Don't Need Another Hero. There are 4 pieces of advice from that article: to put things off until tomorrow, to pick your battles, to bend the rules, don't break them, and to find compromise. So we're going to go into each of those a little bit further. So to put things off until tomorrow, Badaracco advises that strategic stalling can allow for time to find good enough solutions. And what he means is that in contrast to like quick fix stalling, where you just kind of are on the phone with someone and you say, oh, hey, I've got a call on the other line, I'll talk to you later. He's saying that there's strategic stalling that can enable you to buy time to check the facts, consider options, and determine the appropriate courses of action. So Menendez does exemplify this. He did not make a rash decision. He thoughtfully responded to the situation at hand. According to the interview, he initially conducted months of research, debate, and investigation of the issue before deciding to escalate it to his boss. He took the time to review Halliburton's internal policies, reports prepared by internal audit, and even the audits conducted by KPMG staff. And he filed his confidential complaint with the SEC in November 2005, after giving Halliburton executives ample time to discuss and respond to his allegations. So he took his time with it. He didn't just immediately quit his job or immediately go to the SEC. This was like a multi-phase kind of process. And sometimes that's what it takes. So the second piece of advice was pick your battles. According to Badaracco, you should calculate risks and make sound investments of political capital. He explained that it takes time to build respect, trust, and leverage within an organization, and that you shouldn't squander that political capital that you've taken so much time to gain. Practitioners should analyze a dilemma in terms of what they are putting at risk and what they can reasonably expect in return, what wins in the ethical dilemma they can expect to get in return. You don't want to throw away your political capital for nothing. And you want to be able to hold out for the more important situations rather than wasting your time fighting the small battles maybe. So Menendez considered what he was putting at risk and what he could expect in return. He initially expected that his boss would agree with his stance on accounting and work to correct the error, and at first he did agree to do so. So he explained that in 2005, in the financial sector was still reeling from the Enron and WorldCom scandals, and that accountants were going to jail. And in context of this dangerous climate, Menendez decided to take a stand in order to protect himself, his family, and the Halliburton stockholders. So he did take the larger kind of environment of the industry into consideration. He did risk it all to file his complaint with the SEC and inform the audit committee of the issues. He reasonably expected the SEC to investigate and for him to be validated in that way. And he also expected the audit committee to exercise discretion, but he was disappointed by both of these organizations. The SEC opened up the inquiry but chose not to investigate his allegations, and then the audit committee, unfortunately, like I mentioned, did release the details of Menendez's complaint to the CEO, KPMG, etc. And then the CEO forwarded an email around to name Menendez and blame the SEC inquiry on his allegations against the company. So he was blackballed, I guess that's what they call it, for the company. Really messed up his career. The third piece of advice from Badaracco's We Don't Need Another Hero is to bend the rules, don't break them. And I have a nice little quote from there. one member there. According to Badaracco, responsible parties may exercise creativity to maneuver within the boundaries set by the rules. Although Badaracco does not condone breaking the rules, he demonstrates that effective leaders may be respected for the creative problem-solving strategies that at times test the boundaries of the rules. And there are very good examples of that within the article. So what Menendez did is that rather than immediately terminating employment with Halliburton after discovering the fraud, Menendez began to secretly videotape executives during meetings. He knew that the issues were complicated and that as director of technical accounting, he could face scrutiny in the event of a lawsuit or SEC investigation. So he was being proactive, and he was kind of tiptoeing the line, but he wanted to protect himself, and he wanted to get more information, so he took it upon himself to do so. He felt that by bending the rules and tape recording the meetings, he was able to temporarily continue working, avoid unethical conduct, and most importantly, buy himself more time. So this was all part of a larger strategy, a very creative strategy. Okay, and then the fourth piece of advice is to find compromise. Badaracco says that compromise has a bad reputation, but finding a middle ground can be good enough. So compromise doesn't mean giving in on your moral principles, but it means having the maturity and foresight to look at the big picture, embrace the complexities of the issue, and accept realistic solutions to the problem, instead of maybe holding fast to your initial judgment of what the solution looks like and being unwilling to accept anything else. So Menendez ultimately decided that Halliburton's compromise, which was to revise accounting estimates and peel off inventory to avoid restatement, that was not an acceptable compromise. So Menendez did not accept the compromise. He took a stand and filed his complaint to the SEC. He informed the audit committee of the improper revenue recognition and need for restatement, and ultimately he faced the consequences of doing so. Some final thoughts on Badaracco's advice to find compromise, which I just wanted to include, is that although ethical dilemmas may warrant a compromise, even that compromise may also violate ethical guidelines or expose us to substantial risk in our profession. So we have to be very careful about which compromises we're willing to accept. It may be helpful to keep an open mind when considering compromises, but it's always acceptable to take a firm stand and reject compromises that do not honor our values. At this point, Menendez could have quit, when he realized that the financial statements weren't being properly restated, but what he decided to do was to be a whistleblower at that point. So even if we compromise on the resolution of a particular ethical dilemma, according to Ayn Rand, there can be no compromise on moral principles. I'm a big Ayn Rand fan. All right. So thank you very much for watching and listening. Please reach out to me by email if you have any questions.